Avengers Infinity War is a 2018 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics superhero team, the Avengers. Produced by Marvel Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studio Motion Pictures, it is a sequel to The Avengers in 2012 and Avengers Age of Ultron in 2015, and the 19th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Directed by Anthony and Joe Russo and written by Christopher Markus and Stephen McFeely, in the film, the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy attempt to prevent Thanos from collecting the 6 all-powerful Infinity Stones as part of his quest to kill half of all life in the universe. The film was announced in October 2014 as Avengers Infinity War Part 1. The Russo brothers came on board to direct in April of 2015, and a month later Markus and McFeely signed on to write the script for the film, which draws inspiration from Jim Starlin's 1991 comic book, The Infinity Gauntlet, and Jonathan Hickman's 2013 comic book, Infinity. In 2016, Marvel shortened the title to Avengers Infinity War. Filming began in January 2017 at Pinewood Atlanta Studios in Fayette County, Georgia, with a large cast consisting mostly of actors reprising their roles from the previous MCU films, including Brolin as Thanos. The production lasted until July 2017, shooting back-to-back with the direct sequel, Avengers Endgame, which would be released in 2019. Additional filming took place in Scotland, the downtown Atlanta area, and in New York City. With an estimated budget of between $325 to $400 million, the film is one of the most expensive films ever made. Avengers Infinity War premiered in Los Angeles on April 23, 2018, and was released in the United States on April 27 as part of Phase 3 of the MCU. The film received praise for Brolin's performance, visual effects, action sequences, and emotional weight. The film was the 4th film and the first superhero film to gross over $2 billion worldwide, breaking numerous box office records and becoming the highest-grossing film of 2018 and the 4th highest-grossing film of all time, both worldwide and in the United States and Canada. It received nominations for Best Visual Effects at the 91st Academy Awards, among numerous other accolades. The sequel, Avengers Endgame, was released in April of 2019. The main cast includes Robert Downey Jr. reprising his role of Tony Stark Iron Man. Co-director Joe Russo explained that Stark senses this greater threat approaching, so he's doing everything in his power to keep the Earth safe. Downey added that Stark has smaller goals than in previous films. Chris Hemsworth as Thor. Joe Russo stated that Thor's storyline picks up after the events of Thor Ragnarok in 2017, which finds him in a very profound, very interesting place with real emotional motivation. At the recommendation of Hemsworth, writers Chris Markus and Stephen McFeely consulted Thor Ragnarok director Taika Waititi and screenwriter Eric Pearson to help carry over the comedic and tragic elements of the retoned Thor from that film. Joe Russo said that Thor has the driving hero's arc of the movie, which stands in direct opposition to Thanos' argument, and he would have been the main protagonist of the film had Thor killed Thanos. Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, Hulk. Banner spends the film trying to reintegrate with the Avengers and impress upon everybody how dangerous Thanos is. Joe Russo felt the Hulk refusing to appear for much of the film was only partially because he was scared, but also because he realizes that Banner only wants the Hulk for fighting. I think he's had enough of saving Banner's ass. Russo added that this was really reflective of the journey from Ragnarok, where these two characters are constantly in conflict with each other, over control. Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, Captain America. Joe Russo said after the events of Captain America Civil War in 2016, Rogers struggles with the conflict between his responsibility to himself and his responsibility to others. The character embodies the spirit of the comic book identity nomad in the film, and receives new vibranium gauntlets from Shuri to replace his old shield. An early draft of the film had Rogers first appearing at the end of the film to save Vision from Corvus Glaive in Wakanda. Markus and McFeely were called insane for waiting that long to introduce Rogers into the film, and ultimately conceded it was not a satisfying approach. Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, or Black Widow. Johansson said that Romanoff's situation following Captain America Civil War had been a dark time. I wouldn't say that my character has been particularly hopeful, but I think she's hardened even more than she probably was before. Benedict Cumberbatch as Dr. Stephen Strange. Markus and McFeely described Strange as ending up being the responsible adult in the room, with the widest perspective available. Tom Holland as Peter Parker Spider-Man. Downey helped coach Holland through his death scene, which was not as drawn out in the actual script. Paul Bettany as Vision. Anthony Russo called Vision a living MacGuffin, his life being in direct conflict with Thanos' quest, which raises the stakes. Tom Hiddleston as Loki. Hiddleston knew about Loki's death in Infinity War prior to the production of Thor Ragnarok after meeting the Russos in May 2016, with his death being the first scene of the film that the Russos had conceptualized. Hiddleston's knowledge of Loki's fate in Infinity War influenced his portrayal in Ragnarok. On Loki's final moments, Hiddleston believed that it was very powerful that Loki calls himself Odin's son, as it was a moment that closes the whole journey for Loki, while his death takes the stakes up dramatically, establishing the threat of Thanos. And finally, Josh Brolin as Thanos, the intergalactic warlord from Titan who seeks all 6 Infinity Stones to destroy half of all life for the sake of rebalancing the universe. Producer Kevin Feige added that Thanos believes the universe is becoming overpopulated, which led to the destruction of his home moon Titan, and is something he vowed not to let happen again. He could almost go as far as to say he's the main character of the film. McFeely shared his sentiment, describing the film as a hero journey, in addition to being the film's protagonist, stating, "Part of this is the things that mean most to him. We wanted to show that it wasn't just power, it wasn't just an ideal, it was people." Brolin likened Thanos to the Quasimodo of this time and the novel Perfume, since Thanos was born deformed and considered a freak on Titan. While Joe Russo would reference The Godfather 1972 for Brolin at times, which Brolin felt helped emotionalize the whole thing. Now, Avengers Infinity War is an absolutely fantastic film. It successfully juggles a huge array of MCU heroes in the fight against their gravest threat yet, and the result is a thrilling, emotional, resonant blockbuster that realizes its enormous ambitions. The movie is structured to show off each hero and heroine and give them just enough to do. Each character fits in perfectly in what must have been a huge undertaking to plan and write around. And yet it all comes off so smoothly and with a sense of ease, handled expertly here by the Russo brothers, who just seem to get the MCU series perfectly. This was one of the biggest and most ambitious movies ever made, and they really do pull it off. Josh Brolin is absolutely magnificent here as Thanos, and his motion capture performance is supremely effective and interesting. Brolin infuses a sense of emotional nuance into this layered, expert performance. Thanos, for me, while being without doubt the main antagonist in the film, also asks very interesting questions of the audience. What I find makes him such an interesting baddie, as it were, is that he believes he is doing the right thing. He is doing good by the universe. He is making the decisions that no one else is prepared to make. These type of antagonists always make for interesting characters, as they believe they are doing right. They believe they have a just cause, and that's what makes them so much more layered and fascinating. Brolin performs Thanos as a calm, considered character who, albeit tyrannical, is unexpectedly resonant, emotional dimension, making him so much more than just a supervillain. I remembered seeing this film and feeling so emotional at the end and being left in complete shock. It was just so mind-blowing to see a superhero film where evil actually prevails. At the time, I just remember feeling this raw emotion overcome me as these beloved characters that you've come to know so well over the past 10 years were just disappearing one by one randomly in front of your eyes. For me, the click heard around the world is one of the most pivotal moments in cinema history, and is truly a moment that you will never forget. This film, though, left me asking many questions. For example, the question of overpopulation. Is Thanos inherently wrong in believing that our resources will be drastically reduced as people continue to overpopulate our living space? Okay, here we are talking about the universe, but we could apply the same logic to our very own Earth. So in theory, his ideas make sense, but in practice, of course, he's an evil and a tyrant, as at the end of the day, who is it for him to decide to get rid of half of the universe's population in such a cold and unemotional manner? That's why the character of Thanos and the whole film in its entirety are so beautifully written. But the whole cast are on point here, as they've become so familiar with their respective roles that they just play them so perfectly. This movie made some bold choices, and to take on a project of this size as part one of the finality of this huge MCU journey, which started back in 2008, was groundbreaking and had never been done in cinema history before. I went in with huge expectations, and I'm happy to say this movie surpassed all of my expectations in a powerful piece of filmmaking that I will never surely forget. Fantastically made, well written, with excellent acting, leaving you with some raw emotions and questions afterwards. Avengers Infinity War gets a 9.5 out of 10.